Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, October 31st. Happy Halloween, 5:26 a.m. Central Time. Grain markets are mixed this morning. December corn futures unchanged at 411.5. January soybeans up 5.25 at 996.5. December Chicago wheat down a half cent at 572.75. December Kansas City wheat down 1.25 at 574. December spring wheat is down 1 at 608. Let's start off with this RFK story.
So, RFK Jr. may have a significant role in the USDA if Donald Trump is elected president. During a virtual event this week, Kennedy said that Trump has promised him control of the USDA. In a promotional video on YouTube, Kennedy stated that he intends to alter America's ag policy by introducing policies that would benefit farmers, consumers, and the environment. Kennedy intends to propose policies aimed at providing relief to small farmers. He also plans to promote sustainable and regenerative farming practices while banning certain agricultural chemicals.
There were a couple different things floating out there. Trump pledged to give RFK control of Health and Human Services and also USDA.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that he'll be the secretary of one of these organizations, or maybe he gets some cabinet appointment where he gets to oversee them without being the secretary? I don't know. Some of the stuff that he talked about in this YouTube video is pretty severe, I would call it, in terms of the overhauls that he's talking about. So we're going to play the video. I'll preface this by saying that, yes, this is a political ad. I get it. And I'm not endorsing anybody, but there's a very real chance that Donald Trump's elected president here next week. And there's a very real chance that RFK has some say in some of this policy. So I think that this does apply. And I don't like playing political ads here, but we're going to do it. So let's go and then we'll talk about it.
Hi, this is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm here outside of the United States Department of Agriculture to tell you about a win-win policy that I'll be pushing in the Trump administration. It's a win for farmers, for consumers, and for the environment. And the purpose is to make America healthy again. America's current ag policy is destroying America's health on every level. It's destroying the economic health of farmers by forcing them to get big or get out. Big corporate farms do just fine, while the small and medium family operators are squeezed to the point of collapse. It also destroys the health of America's soil and water by tilting the playing field in favor of more chemicals, more herbicides, more insecticides, more concentrated monocrops and feedlots. And finally, it destroys the health of consumers. Not only do the chemicals pollute our bodies, the same way that they pollute the soil, but corporate interests have hijacked the USDA's dietary guidelines to make natural, unprocessed foods barely an afterthought. That's one reason why 70% of the American diet now consists of ultra-processed food. We're going to change that. We're going to give farmers an off-ramp from the current system that destroys their health, wrecks the soil, makes Americans sick, and destroys family farms. We're going to rewrite the regulations to give the smaller operators a break. We're going to encourage sustainable, regenerative farming that can build soil and replenish aquifers. We're going to ban the worst agricultural chemicals that are already prohibited in other countries. And we're going to remove conflicts of interest from the USDA dietary panels and commissions. I've seen some of what America's most innovative regenerative farmers are doing today. They can literally green deserts. They rebuild depleted soils. Wells that had been dry for 30 years start flowing again. They heal the land, and some of them make a very good living doing it. But unfortunately, many more have to fight the system in order to do what's right. It doesn't have to be this way. And when Donald Trump gets me inside the building I'm standing outside of right now, it won't be this way anymore. American agriculture will come roaring back, and so will American health. If you want this to happen as much as I do, please donate.
All right, we can skip the please donate, but he's talking major overhaul, substantial overhaul. It's a lot of talk, though, without very many details. And I think that a massive change in policy or rules or regulations, I don't know exactly what it'll be, but it sounds impactful, not just to grain farmers, but livestock also, Mackenzie.
Oh, for certain. This would be incredible. But again, like
incredible in what way, though? That's the thing. We don't know.
Yeah, and that's debatable. But everyone knows this. You just can't step in and make all these changes. Like, you have to go through Congress and, all the steps.
And some of this could take years. Like, so he gets in and starts to push toward this direction. Yeah, a lot of it's going to have to get through Congress. But then what, Trump is 4 years and then he's out. And say another administration comes in and says, no, we're done with this. Like, where's the farmer left then? if they start to implement some of this, but then maybe it doesn't. I don't know. There's just a million questions. What do you guys think? Drop us some comments in YouTube here, because I'm kind of clueless on this because there's so few. It's a lot of talk with very few details. I don't know, but it's going to be impactful if it happens, I think. All right, next story.
So MF Global went bankrupt 13 years ago today. MF Global had been one of the largest clearing firms in the futures industry prior to the bankruptcy. CEO John Corzine, former New Jersey governor, former New Jersey governor and Goldman Sachs alumnus, used customer funds to cover bad bets on his own sovereign debt trades. The misuse of funds ultimately resulted in insolvency. On October 31st, 2011, executives of the company admitted that a transfer of $700 million from customer accounts and a loan of $175 million in customer funds were used to cover a shortfall in liquidity. The bankruptcy left many customers with missing money until proceedings were completed. The bankruptcy was the 11th largest in the history of the U.S.
It was the 8th largest bankruptcy at the time. It's now the 11th largest. This was a tragedy of the futures industry at the time. This impacted investors and farmers and all sorts of different people. What happened was Corzine was trading sovereign debt with company money. They were a publicly traded company, and the trades went bad. And he used customer funds, farmers, investors, used customer funds to cover his bad trades, and it didn't work out. So what happened was, if you were a customer of MF Global, if you cleared your trades at MF Global, and if they weren't the biggest clearing firm at the time, they were one of the biggest. If you were using MF Global as your clearing firm, any cash that you had that wasn't being used for margin purposes disappeared. If you had cash that was being used to margin positions, it stayed in the account. And shortly after, a couple days after the bankruptcy, all the accounts transferred to one of like 2 or 3 different clearing firms. But that extra money, if you had excess funds, they disappeared, and they were ultimately returned. But like 2 or 3 years later, there was this whole bankruptcy filing paperwork that you had to go through. It was a giant pain in the ass. So this was a big deal in farm country at the time, because there were a lot of farmers that had money that went missing. I personally had brokerage customers at MF Global that had hundreds of thousands of dollars that disappeared, and was returned a couple of years later. John Corzine went on to run a hedge fund. He was barred from ever trading futures again, but I think he went on to do something in probably the equity market. CFTC banned him for life. He ultimately paid a $5 million penalty, I believe, which is chump change for a guy like him. He's retired now. I think he's pretty old. Interestingly enough, maybe for you guys, I don't know, I got my start doing media and talking about markets at MF Global. So sometime in 2006, shortly after I got out of school at Champaign, I was working at MF Global in the Chicago office, and somebody, one of the managers, was like walking around the office and said, "Hey, CME Group wants to do some market commentary, like video commentary from the trading floor. Does anybody want to do the grain markets?" And like nobody wanted to do it. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." But I was 23 and I didn't know anything. So I kind of like just grabbed somebody's like newsletter probably that they wrote and went and kind of just talked about the markets based off of that. But that's how I got my start talking about the markets. Was at first I was in the grain room, and then when the grain room closed, we were in the financial room, and you were at the backdrop that you see here. But I talked about markets working for MF Global right up until the day they went bankrupt. Basically, it was an interesting time for me personally. Following the bankruptcy, it was kind of messy for a while. I'll tell the whole story someday. I'm not ready for it now, but interesting piece of history on myself. If you were interested, you're probably not, but whatever.
Rains have returned to the U.S. Corn Belt. The radar is active this morning over parts of South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Observed rains over the last 24 hours impacted parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Wisconsin. The forecast is wet and offers additional rain over the next few days. The Corn Belt has become very dry in recent weeks. USDA estimated last week that a whopping 76% of U.S. corn areas were experiencing drought, the highest levels since 2012. Despite the rains, government projections indicate little improvement to water levels on the Mississippi River through mid-November.
Very much welcome rain. It's been incredibly dry. The radar is very, very active this morning. There's even some rain just the last 24 hours. It's beginning to accumulate. The river level first thing I'll say is that a lot of this is winter wheat country. Also, you look at those HRW wheat areas of Kansas, a little bit of Colorado, Oklahoma into Nebraska. They're going to get wet. SRW wheat area is getting wet. The winter wheat ratings were very poor to start. This should help to improve them, although ratings in the fall don't have much correlation to final yield. I think that the river may improve slightly more than what they're projecting here. I feel like the government doesn't necessarily go off of the forecast maybe as much as they could. Maybe they'll believe it when they see it when it comes to rainfall. But an improvement in the river situation would be very good for basis, potentially for export demand. It'd help lower prices because transportation costs on the river would be reduced. So the rains are welcome for a lot of different reasons.
So if you guys have not checked out our premium content, you sure need to do so. Joe, can you tell me about yesterday's premium video with Matt Bennett?
This was some fantastic grain marketing discussion with Matt Bennett yesterday. Creative ways to make storage pay. So Matt was in the cash grain business, ran a grain elevator for years, and talked about the ways that elevators make storage pay through carry, through basis, all that stuff, and some of the things that you as a farmer should consider. This is like a 25-minute video. We talked about this mostly and a couple other items as well. I know this is a hot topic right now. Hey, I'm throwing corn in the bin, but what's the game plan? How do I make this carry thing work for me? And it's very difficult to do, but there is a needle that can be threaded potentially. If you guys want to see the premium stuff, go to standardgrain.com. You can sign up this morning. It's a $50 per month subscription. You can cancel at any time. No other fee, no other obligation. Nobody will try to sell you anything else. We only want to sell you information. I don't want to do your brokerage business. I don't want to talk to you. We're never going to call you. You just sign up. We'll send you the info, and that's it. Everything's super easy to do on your phone. It's one click to play the videos. The emails are very easily accessible on your phone. There's no PDF to open. It's a piece of cake, guys. Check that deal out this morning.
U.S. ethanol production increased for the fifth consecutive week last week. Weekly output of 1.082 million barrels per day was up slightly on the week and up 4% versus the same week last year. Ethanol stocks were pegged at 21.8 million barrels. The print was down 2% compared to the previous week, but up 1.7% compared to the same week last year. Implied gasoline demand was up 3.6% compared to the previous week and up 3.3% versus the same week last year. On average, over the last 4 weeks, implied U.S. gasoline demand is up 5.4% compared to the same period last year.
Excellent week of production again. I believe ethanol margins have backed off a little bit, so maybe you don't sustain this sort of pace. If you were to sustain this sort of pace, we're running 3% ahead of last year in terms of production. USDA is projecting reduced corn demand via ethanol year over year. So if you could maintain this 3% pace, that's an extra 185 million bushels of additional demand versus current USDA projections, which is hugely substantial. I don't think it'll be that much, but we'll take 100 million. How about we take about half of that or a little bit more? That would be excellent, and it would absolutely help to put a dent in this burdensome carryout projection that USDA has got on paper.
China is looking to increase its reliance on Russian soybeans. The move comes as China is working to diversify its soybean suppliers and reduce its reliance on U.S. soybeans. Russia isn't exactly known for its soybean production. Last season, the country produced 6.8 million metric tons of soybeans, accounting for less than 2% of global production. Meanwhile, China imported 99.4 million metric tons of soybeans last season.
The evil BRICS are conspiring to eliminate us from the global soybean trade once again. As Mackenzie mentioned, Russia cool story, bro, but it doesn't matter because Russia produces like nothing when it comes to soybeans. 7.3 million metric tons is the projection this year. Brazil is going to produce 169 million for reference. So I wouldn't read this as a threat necessarily.
The USDA is distributing $239 million to expand biofuel availability. The agency will provide $39 million in grants to U.S. business owners to increase the availability of biofuels across 18 states. The funds will be used to construct and enhance infrastructure, including fuel pumps, dispensers, and storage tanks. The USDA will also provide $200 million for the creation of bio-based technologies. The investment is intended to create new revenue for businesses, promote energy independence, and provide new income opportunities in rural America. It's also meant to provide more affordable and cleaner fuel options for American drivers.
Great news, but I trade you this for 45Z guidance, and that ain't coming anytime soon. Next story.
So USDA reported multiple flash sales on Wednesday. U.S. exporters sold 5 million bushels of soybeans to China and 5 million bushels of soybeans to unknown destinations for delivery during the current marketing year. And exporters also sold 11 million bushels of corn to unknown destinations for delivery during the current marketing year.
You're going to see some pretty good looking export sales later this morning reported. I think just via flash sale alone, there's already been like 2 million metric tons of corn reported. Soybean sales should be north of 2 million metric tons. So you should see some good numbers reported at 7:30. What did cattle do yesterday?
Cattle futures were down hard. Live cattle were 90 cents to $1.57 lower. The October feeder contract was able to gain 92 cents. However, the rest of the board saw losses ranging from $1.10 to $2.65 lower. Box beef was lower again. Choice ended the day at $319.44. That was down $1.17. Select ended the day at $289.32. That was down 64 cents.
U.S. dollars about flat this morning. Stocks are off. The S&P's down 48 points. Dow Jones is down 220. Bonds are off just a little bit. Gold's down $11. Crude oil is up 42 cents. And the December WTI at 69.04. Have a great day, guys. We'll be back on Friday.